What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Hot Sauces, Hot Takes. Now, in honor of my favorite movie of all time, turning 25 years old today, the original Fast and the Furious, I wanted to do a recap video, some behind the scenes stuff, and give you my takes on it. But I found this creator right here, and he did a way better job than I could ever do. So, enjoy.
The original Fast and the Furious almost had the most problematic and unintentionally hilarious title in film history. The Fast and the Furious turns 25 years old this month, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind the Fast and the Furious starts in the late 1990s in New York City, with the underground street racing scene. After witnessing an auto theft in Queens, 25-year-old journalist Ken Lee embedded himself in the illegal race community, and he ultimately wrote the article Racer X for the May 1998 issue of Vibe magazine. The article caught the eye of Universal Studios, who optioned the film rights from Lee. The journalist said he was paid six figures by the studio, which isn't that bad for a 25-year-old reporter in 1998. But years later, he regretted not asking for more, telling Yahoo News, "Back then I was just a shithead writer who had no experience in Hollywood. And I was in my 20s, so you get the worst deal. You get no points, no royalties, nothing." And that's right, Lee has not seen a single dollar of what the Fast and Furious franchise eventually became. But anyway, Universal then took Lee's article and put it in a drawer. Meanwhile, Universal was working on The Skulls with director Rob Cohen and star Paul Walker. The 2000 college thriller did moderately well, $50 million box office against a $15 million budget. So Rob Cohen signs a deal with Universal and producer Neil H. Moritz to follow it up with an action movie. Cohen liked working with Walker, so he asked him what his dream action movie would be, and Walker said a mashup of Days of Thunder and Donnie Brasco. Basically, Walker wanted to be an undercover cop who was also a race car driver. And wouldn't you know, Universal was sitting on Racer X about underground street racing. And they all knew that should be the movie. So Cohen and Moritz hired writers Gary Scott Thompson and Eric Berquist to pen the screenplay. Many film fans and critics later called out the script for being nearly identical to 1991's Point Break. The Fast and the Furious unmistakably follows the same core narrative as Point Break, but as far as I can tell, the writers and filmmakers have never addressed the similarities. Anyway, the original writers set the story in New York based on the Racer X article. And then Cohen and Moritz brought in David Ayer to rewrite the script. He then moved the action to Los Angeles, the birthplace of American street racing culture. At this point, they weren't sure what they were going to call the movie. They considered Racer X as the title, and then they also considered Redline, Street Wars, and yes, Race Wars, which of course is a reference to the big race event in the script, but it also would have been pretty problematic and racially insensitive. So it's probably a good thing they didn't call the movie Race Wars. Anyway, at some points, Neil H. Morris watched a documentary about the mid-century film studio American International Pictures, which referenced producer Roger Corman's 1954 B-movie, The Fast and the Furious. Moritz knew that would be the perfect title for his new street racing film, so he traded the rights to some stock footage to Roger Corman in exchange for the rights to that title. During the film's development, Cohen and the rest of the team attended real street races in LA, and Cohen also saw the movie as a Western, writing in the production notes, "What we're doing is taking the Western and recreating it in a contemporary urban milieu. Our film deals with some of the most important themes of classic Westerns: loyalty, betrayal, freedom. But instead of horses, we've got horsepower." Then it came time to cast the movie, and here's where we get some conflicting reports. According to Paul Walker, he was involved in the film's inception, as I described over the last 3 minutes. But there are also reports that the studio considered Eminem, Mark Wahlberg, and Christian Bale for the lead role of Brian O'Connor, and that Eminem turned it down to do 8 Mile instead. Either way, Paul Walker was cast as Brian, reuniting with Rob Cohen. They all agreed that he needed a cool co-star to balance out the scales as Dominic Toretto. Originally, the studio said they'd only greenlight the movie if they could get Timothy Olyphant to play Dom, but Olyphant had just acted in the car movie Gone in 60 Seconds, so he declined. He also later said he thought The Fast and the Furious would be, quote, stupid. And there's a little bit more on Gone in 60 Seconds that I'll get to in, well, a minute. No pun intended. Moritz then suggested Vin Diesel, who was also on the rise, thanks to Saving Private Ryan, Boiler Room, and Pitch Black. Diesel turned it down at first, but later accepted after some convincing by Neil Moritz. The role of Mia Toretto, meanwhile, was originally written for Eliza Dushku, but she declined. Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jessica Biel, Kirsten Dunst, and Natalie Portman all auditioned before Jordana Brewster got the part. Brewster had just finished her first year at Yale when she was cast in the movie, and after making it, she did go back to school and finished her degree, graduating in 2003. Rob Cohen got to see an early cut of Michelle Rodriguez in Girl Fight, and he loved her so much they went back to the script and created the part of Letty specifically for her. Neither Brewster nor Rodriguez had driver's license prior to filming, so they both had to take driver's ed to learn how to drive. Moritz and Cohen then cameo as a Ferrari driver and Pizza Hut delivery guy, respectively, while rapper Ja Rule and auto journalist / entrepreneur RJ DeVera cameo as street racers. DeVera also served as technical consultant on the film. He assisted in choosing the vehicles and their upgrades for the various characters. The filmmakers also consulted with Craig Lieberman, the head of the National Import Racing Association at the time. Cohen said he considered the cars the co-stars of the movie, and they worked with legendary transportation coordinator David Martyr to select impressive and expensive imports. Martyr led a team of 82 professionals who redesigned, built, and maintained the cars. But rather than pay for each vehicle, they often replicated them at a much cheaper cost, sometimes building several replicas. For example, they built 7 copies of Brian's Mitsubishi Eclipse. Brian's second car, meanwhile, was a legendary Supra owned by Craig Lieberman. It had 2 turbochargers, nitrous oxide injection, and over 600 horsepower. They prepared and used more than 150 import cars total on the movie. During pre-production, the cast, producers, director, cinematographer, and anybody who was going to be driving cars on set attended race car driving school, and then on June 9th, 2000, 1 month before The Fast and the Furious was going to start shooting, Touchstone Pictures released Gone in 60 Seconds in theaters. Racer X writer Ken Lee told Yahoo, "I remember when that movie came out, I thought, we're dead." And he says Universal wasn't super confident in The Fast and the Furious. Quote, "At the time, I don't think they thought it would be a huge thing. They thought it'd be a sleeper." But still, the studio pressed on. Universal set the budget at $38 million, and filming began in Southern California in July of 2000. The opening scene where Brian tests his Eclipse was filmed in the parking lots of Dodger Stadium. The neighborhoods around the Toretto house were filmed in Silver Lake and Echo Park. Tran destroys the Eclipse in LA's Little Saigon, and they shot the Race Wars event at the San Bernardino International Airport. The production put out an open call for cool cars and spectators, and 1,500 import car owners and car enthusiasts showed up for the film shoot, despite the fact that temperatures hit 112 degrees that day. The final heist scene was filmed on the Domenigoni Parkway in the San Jacinto Valley near Diamond Valley Lake. For this sequence, stunt coordinator / second unit director Mike Rogers invented a new camera rig to capture the driving action. Dubbed the Mike Rig, it was a van with a flatbed that offered better angles and mobility. The production ended up wrecking 78 cars total during the shoot, and then filming wrapped in October of 2000. For the movie's music, they hired famous pop and electronic music producer BT, which made sense because he previously scored Go and Gone in 60 Seconds. He infused fast score with electronica, hip-hop, and industrial influences. The movie also used a number of needle drops from Faith Evans, Ashanti, DMX, Fat Joe, Limp Bizkit, Method Man, R. Kelly, Nate Dogg, and Ja Rule. The Fast and the Furious then opened on 2,628 screens on June 22, 2001. It did $40 million opening weekend, landing at number 1, beating Dr. Dolittle 2. It would spend 6 weeks in the top 10 and 19 weeks total in theaters, ultimately grossing $207 million worldwide, more than 5 times its budget. Audiences felt just okay about the movie, giving it a B+ cinema score in theater exit polls, and critics were similarly muted. Today, 55% of the 155 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. Vin Diesel and Paul Walker won the MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Team, while BT took home a Stinker Award for Most Intrusive Musical Score. The Fast and the Furious hit DVD and VHS on January 2nd, 2002, and became a smash hit, selling 2.1 million copies on its first day, which was the second highest DVD debut of all time at that point. It also grossed a record $18.65 million in video store rentals in its first week. The movie went on to sell 5.5 million home video copies by April 2002. The Fast and the Furious has had a huge legacy. First off, it helped popularize the import scene and car tuning in the US in the 2000s, and some LA police officers believe it led to an increase in street racing in the city. Practically, the movie spawned toys, models, board games, a video game in 2003, followed by several more for consoles, mobile, and arcades, and then Universal greenlighted a sequel almost immediately. But Vin Diesel and Rob Cohen opted not to return, instead choosing to make XXX. Paul Walker continued on in Too Fast, Too Furious in 2003, and then neither Diesel nor Walker appeared in movie 3, Tokyo Drift, but they both returned for 2009's Fast and Furious, which led to the series becoming a major franchise. That ultimately spawned 2 short films, an animated TV series on Netflix, theme park rides, and so far, 11 theatrical movies, including the spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. Altogether, those films have grossed $7.5 billion worldwide. Paul Walker tragically died in an automobile accident at the age of 40 in 2013, while Furious 7 was still in production. The movie is dedicated to him and serves as his send-off. Fast 11, meanwhile, has a release date of March 17th, 2028. Thanks for watching this video. If you've made it to the end, write family in the comments. For more movie histories, check out the attached playlist and subscribe to the Pop Culture Brain podcast for the latest pop culture news.